On this Saturday night, hostage exchange back on. The anticipation and anxiety after Hamas delays its next hostage release. Plus, the scenes of pure joy after weeks of agony. Our interview with one of the pioneers of AI.
And there are lots of moral but also security dangers.
And his concern about how the new technology is being used in the conflict. The NHL's mask mandate, the Canadian goalie who defied the league to honor Indigenous heritage. A digital nomad's paradise.
You can really feel that the whole town became way more international.
Why remote workers are converging on a tiny European town.
Global National with Farah Nasser.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. It has been a day of fast-moving developments, including fears the fragile truce between Israel and Hamas could fall apart. But we have breaking news this evening. Hamas has released a second round of hostages. For hours, Hamas delayed the handover of the next group of captives, accusing Israel of breaking its end of the bargain, saying aid wasn't getting into the northern areas of the Gaza Strip. This video shows a convoy of Red Cross vehicles approaching the Rafah border crossing, believed to be carrying 13 Israeli captives, including 4 foreign nationals, in exchange for 39 Palestinian prisoners. According to reports, the hostages include 7 children and 6 women, whose ages range from as young as 3 up to 67, and 4 Thai nationals who are among the group. At one point today, Israel warned it would resume its war and bombardment of Gaza unless Hamas abides by the agreement, releasing the second round of hostages by midnight. Today's delay is just a reminder of how quickly things can unravel. Mike Armstrong has our top story tonight.
As soon as he saw him, he was off. Ohad Munder looking for a hug from his father. The 9-year-old spent 49 days as a hostage with his mother and grandmother, but the family says this moment was bittersweet. Ohad's grandfather is still held by Hamas, and another member of the family will never come back.
My cousin was murdered on that Saturday, so the puzzle cannot be finished, cannot be complete.
This was another reunion at the same pediatric hospital. A father with his arms around his entire family. His wife and 2 daughters were all hostages. When 4-year-old Raz says she dreamed of going home, her father says that dream is coming true. Ohad and 4 other children were taken to the same facility, along with 4 adults. The plan is for some catching up and some gentle pampering. Some of Ohad's friends dropped by the hospital Saturday. The director of pediatrics says the 9 former hostages are in good condition, and hospital staff is avoiding prodding them with questions.
They're telling us their stories, and we're listening, and we're exciting with them, sometimes crying with them.
For some of the hostages, being released meant finding out what happened to other members of the family. 72-year-old Adina Moshe had to be told her husband had been killed October 7th. She also had to get accustomed to sunlight because of where she was kept.
She was in a tunnel. She was not used to the daylight. And during her captivity, she was disconnected at all from all the outside world.
Also released Friday were 10 Thai hostages and 1 Filipino. Some of their families only found out they were alive watching the news as it happened live. This woman in Thailand says she danced in the street when she saw her daughter and son-in-law were free. She says she hasn't been able to watch anything, with bombs falling and her daughter somewhere in the middle of it. The wait now drags on for the families of other hostages, holding out hope. There was for one family a bit of good news. One of the released hostages says they saw 79-year-old Haim Perry alive. Even that sliver of information is more than they had before and is very, very welcome. Farah.
Mike Armstrong in Jerusalem tonight. Thank you, Mike. As we mentioned, the hostage exchange stalled largely because of a dispute about aid getting into Gaza. Hamas officials say 340 trucks entered the enclave since Friday, 65 of which reached northern Gaza. They say that's less than half of what was agreed to in the Qatari brokered deal. Israel earlier said 50 aid trucks did reach northern parts of the Gaza Strip and insists it hasn't violated the terms. People in Gaza are making the most of whatever food and fuel is trickling in. And as David Akin reports, Gazans are also using the pause to return to their homes that are in ruins.
As the war pauses, a chance to see what the war has wrought. Tahani al-Najjar returned to her home in southern Gaza to find it destroyed. She says it was destroyed in 2008 and again in 2014. And as she pulls household goods out of the rubble, she says in Arabic, "We will rebuild again. We will rebuild out of stubbornness against the Jews. Let them destroy, and we will keep rebuilding." Elsewhere in this city of 200,000 people, Palestinians flocked to food markets, many thankful for some signs of normalcy after more than 40 days of war. Fresh tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, lemon, even fresh fried falafel. Today's prices are less than yesterday, this resident says. Goods are more available. But fuel remains a scarce commodity. Some here waited 5 hours to fill a tank and still came away with nothing. Israeli authorities permitted 4 tankers of fuel and another 4 of cooking gas to enter southern Gaza. Israeli authorities said they were meant for essential humanitarian infrastructure, such as hospitals. Khan Yunis is just 13 kilometers away from the Rafah border crossing, where the largest fleet of aid trucks assembled since the beginning of the war were crossing from Egypt into Gaza. And in the heavily contested north, the Israeli defense minister said trucks had been deployed carrying food, water, shelter equipment, and medical supplies. Many Palestinians said they hoped the truce would become permanent. But the Israeli military has warned no one should return to northern Gaza, which Israel considers an active war zone. David Akin, Global News.
And an update from Global Affairs Canada today over how many Canadians have managed to flee Gaza. To date, it says 473 Canadians, permanent residents, and their family members have crossed the Rafah border crossing into Egypt, and they are still trying to make contact with more than 250 others who are seeking assistance in Gaza. U.S. defense officials are also sounding the alarm over a suspected drone attack on an Israeli-managed container ship. The unnamed American defense source told the Associated Press the alleged attack unfolded in the Indian Ocean in international waters. The Malta-flagged vessel was apparently targeted by a self-destructing Iranian drone, but the ship only suffered minor damage with no injuries. Iran has not claimed responsibility, but in recent years, the U.S. has blamed Iran for similar attacks on Israeli vessels in the same region. An overnight barrage has many worried in Kyiv following what Ukrainian officials called Russia's largest drone attack of the war. Nearly 75 drones are said to have been fired in the attack, a record number according to Ukraine's Air Force, and the vast majority were intercepted. But heavy damage was still seen in Ukraine's capital. As Marney Blunt reports, there are fears this may be the start of an intensified winter campaign by Moscow.
Explosions light up the night sky in Kyiv as Russia launches its most intense drone attack on Ukraine since the invasion began, shattering homes, cars, leaving many picking up the pieces and fearful of what's next. They totally destroyed my balcony and my kitchen, this woman cries. I don't know what I'll do. This woman says they heard the sound of an engine overhead. A second later, a blast came, the door was smashed and hit the opposite wall. It literally flew above our heads. Kyiv's mayor says at least 5 people were wounded, including an 11-year-old child, in the assault that came in waves for over 6 hours. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky condemning the attacks during a ceremony marking the 90th anniversary of Holodomor, a famine that killed millions of Ukrainians.
Зло не було зупинено.
Evil was not stopped, not atoned for, he says, and now we are stopping it. As another winter of war closes in on Ukraine, neither side is backing down, and that's being felt here in Canada. with the recent death of Joshua Mayers, a 34-year-old Edmonton paramedic who went to help Ukrainian troops in September. His family saying he's believed to have died in a drone strike, and they were notified of his death on November 12th. That tragic loss just days after the death of Austin Laughlin-Bercier, a 25-year-old man from Opaskwayak Cree Nation in northern Manitoba. His community lowering their flags to half-mast to honor his heroic efforts.
He dedicated his life for what he believed in and which is helping others.
It's coming up on 2 years since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. In that time, Global Affairs Canada says 9 Canadians have died out of the thousands who have lost their lives as this war drags on. Marney Blunt, Global News, Winnipeg.
Derek Chauvin, that's the former police officer convicted in the murder of George Floyd, has been reportedly stabbed in prison. Minnesota's Attorney General confirmed Chauvin was attacked at a prison in Arizona where he's serving a 21-year federal sentence. Prison officials say employees had to perform life-saving measures after an inmate was stabbed on Friday, but they wouldn't confirm the name of the inmate. In Pakistan, a deadly fire ripped through a shopping center in the country's most populous city. 11 people are known to have died when the blaze broke out at the mall in Karachi. Officials say it was caused by a generator failure on the 3rd floor. The fire spread to several call centers above where most of the victims were working. The fire was extinguished and at least 22 others were injured. The rescue mission to free 41 workers trapped in a tunnel in the Indian Himalayas for 2 weeks has now hit a major hurdle. The heavy drill that was brought in to break up nearly 60 meters of debris was damaged on Friday. Crews are now resorting to power tools to bust through the remaining 15 meters of rubble, meaning the mission will take much longer to free the men. The fallout from Ottawa's fall economic update. Coming up, the Treasury Board president weighs in on prudency versus the government's priorities. Plus, the NHL rule upsetting a Canadian goalie and what he did about it. Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland delivered a glimpse into the state of her government's finances in the fall economic statement. While there was a push for housing in the economic update, there was also an attempt to show some fiscal restraint. Eric Sorensen sat down with a cabinet minister in charge of overseeing government spending, Anita Anand, to find out more about the approach. Eric.
Farah, it can be a thankless job managing the government's purse strings in a time of restraint and cutbacks in the face of a ballooning deficit and debt. Ottawa's fall economic update demonstrated there was little room for big spending. This week on the West Block, Treasury Board President Anita Anand insisted the government is taking a targeted approach on affordable housing while being fiscally responsible.
It certainly is an economic period where we need to watch our purse strings as well as to make sure we're delivering on the priorities that are so important for our country.
Anand, a former Minister of Defense, says the military is also getting more money, though the economic update forecasts a reduction in overall military spending of almost $1 billion from the projections made in 2017. The Chief of Defense Staff, Wayne Eyre, told Mercedes Stephenson this month that the military may not have sufficient capabilities, personnel, and training.
I am very, very concerned about our lack of our readiness state. We have much to do to get our readiness back to where it needs to be.
I was in the portfolio as the Minister of National Defense, and we do need to grow our Canadian Armed Forces. We are seeing a shortfall in recruitment, and we need to make sure that we are at all times ready.
The government's projections are unlikely to tamp down criticism from Canada's NATO allies that this country continues to fall short of its commitment to spend 2% of GDP on defense spending. That and more on Ottawa's economic update on the West Block. Farah?
Thank you, Eric. And that interview with Treasury Board President Anita Anand is tomorrow on the West Block right here on Global. Ahead, we speak to one of the godfathers of AI, why he's concerned about how the tool is being used in the Israel-Hamas conflict. It's been an eventful week in the fast-changing world of artificial intelligence. On Tuesday, Sam Altman announced he's returning as OpenAI's CEO 4 days after he was pushed out of the company that created ChatGPT. Several board members have been replaced, and Altman says he's now looking forward to returning to OpenAI. Joining us now from Montreal is Yoshua Bengio, one of the pioneers of artificial intelligence. And before we start, Mr. Bengio, I just want to say congratulations on winning Canada's most prestigious science prize earlier this month, the Hertzberg Canada Gold Medal for Science and Engineering.
Thank you.
I wanted to start by asking you about the events this week. Now, I know you might not want to get specific about the events surrounding OpenAI, but what does this bring up for you in terms of the direction of this space?
Well, the thoughts I have about this, well, first, I don't have enough information. I think most people don't, to comment specifically on what's going on, but I think it raises a lot of interesting questions that we should have in public. And that is about governance. So what kind of board, what kind of governance should be directing in which direction these very powerful frontier AI systems are being developed? And is this governance process making sure that the public is protected? Because companies are competing with each other and they have to survive, and they might be willing to cut corners. We've seen that already in the past, not just in AI, but it's a property of how markets work. It's also something that makes them innovate faster sometimes. But because of that, I think it's really important that these industries be regulated, that society puts guardrails to make sure that, yes, you can compete, but make sure you don't go through red lines that could be dangerous for the public. And for that, you need a process.
You talk about the dangers of AI. Let me ask you this. How has AI impacted the Israel-Hamas war?
In general, my reflection about this is wars like this are a kind of accelerator for the advances in AI, especially in their application in the military. This might not be a good thing.
I mean, there are reports that Israel's choosing using AI rather, and in the Ukraine war as well, to choose targets. So is that something that's concerning to you?
It is. I've been speaking about that danger for almost a decade now. The issue of using AI, not just to recognize people in pictures, but that could be embedded in a drone that could choose who to shoot. And that the decision to kill is something that would take place without a human intervention. And that's called the lethal autonomous weapons, killer robots in simple terms. And there are lots of moral, but also security dangers, threats to the stability of our societies and geopolitical stability that I think require a lot of precaution before we move there too quickly.
Yoshua Bengio, thank you so much for your time, as always, on this subject.
My pleasure.
Next, if you can work from anywhere, why not? This European town that has become a haven for remote workers. Minnesota Wild goaltender Marc-Andre Fleury has become the latest player to defy the National Hockey League's ban on promoting or celebrating special causes. Last night, the Quebec native took to the ice wearing a specially designed mask for the Wild's Native American Heritage Night. He did so after being told by the NHL that he and his team could face significant fines because of the league's updated guidelines around theme nights. Fleury says he wore the mask to honor his wife's Indigenous heritage. It's still not clear how the league will respond. There is a small town in Bulgaria, and it is increasingly attracting a new kind of visitor. Digital nomads. They're people who travel and work simultaneously, and since the COVID-19 pandemic, their numbers have exploded. Krista Hesse takes us inside the town to find out what's bringing hundreds of remote workers, including Canadians, to the quaint mountainside area.
Ariel Fu is on a mission.
I try to go to all the most popular digital nomad destinations around the world.
That's why she's here in Bansko, Bulgaria. This picturesque town, 2 hours south of the capital, Sofia, has become an international hub for digital nomads. They gather here to enjoy the hiking, affordable rent, and fast Wi-Fi.
So you can really feel that the whole town became way more international, and you can really see who are the nomads. So this is these crazy people running around with laptops.
After the pandemic untethered people from their offices, digital nomadism became mainstream. Exact numbers are hard to come by, but one study found that nearly 17 million Americans describe themselves as digital nomads. And many Canadians have adopted this lifestyle too. Ariel Fu is one of them. A year and a half ago, she left her finance job in Toronto to travel the world.
I'm originally from China. I moved to Canada for school, and I feel like I just didn't feel like a strong sense of community in Toronto.
But here in Bonsko, she finds her people. In the summer off-season, the ski town transforms into a digital nomad village with networking events and activities almost every night, hosted by the myriad of co-working spaces that have opened up in the last few years. Like most remote workers here, Finch Bergling heard about Bonsko through the digital nomad grapevine.
I just want to find what makes me happy. And this is the best thing about being a nomad. You're not limited to anything.
While the movement promotes a lifestyle that's borderless and free, community is what many told us they crave most. And they're willing to travel halfway around the world to a remote Bulgarian town to find it. Krista Hesse, Global News.
To learn more about how the town became a digital nomad hotspot and what's driving the movement, tune into The New Reality tonight at 7 p.m. on Global. And that's Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Farah Nasser. On behalf of our whole crew here, thank you for spending part of your evening with us this Saturday. Tonight's Your Canada is Bonavista Bay in Newfoundland and Labrador. We love seeing your Canada, so please keep emailing us your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Until tomorrow, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Good night.